I'm going to make some crab bisque. You can't make a good soup without using the bones of whatever fish or seafood it is. You can't make a good fish stock unless you have bones of fish. So you can't make a good crab bisque unless you have whole crabs, and I'm using blue crabs. These blue crabs I caught and were placed in the freezer immediately. It's very difficult to make a crab bisque just using a pound or two of lump crab meat. You're not going to get the full flavor. So this is not that easy to make, but this is the right way to do it. I'm going to saute these crabs and cook them and get color out of them with the vegetables. Then later on we'll break them up as fine as possible after they've been boiled in the stock, and then you have something good. So let's start. And this is the same procedure if you're making a lobster bisque. You'll saute the whole lobster. When you make lobster American, you saute the whole lobster and it's pulverized and made into the sauce. There's nothing cheap about making a good seafood dish. So once we make the soup, you can go and buy a can of lump crab meat or special white crab meat and then use it as a garnish in the soup. Just put a little bit in it so you see the crab meat. Because this is not pickable when we do this. And you can't boil the crabs and think you're going to make a good soup either. This has to be sauteed, like braised and cooked, and the shell's got to get color, which will give the soup a good color. So the first thing to do, I put some plain vegetable oil in there on a very high flame. And we're going to put the crabs in there. I'm using 2 3/4 pounds of crab. I'm not sure of the yield that we're going to get out of it, but it's going to be substantial. After I saute all the crabs, then I'm going to do the vegetables. Then we're going to put everything back in there, fill it up with water. There's another way to do this if you want to avoid all this sauteing. Just put it on a hot grill outside and the juice should stay in, but more of it will stay in this way. So I'm not going to waste the film, but as you see, what's going to happen, I have to use a high flame. It's going to make a mess in the kitchen, but that's how it is sometimes. This is the way it's done in the professional kitchen. You don't have to worry about making a mess. There's always someone else to clean it up. So I'm going to be doing this maybe for about 20 minutes until everything is a beautiful red and then starts to turn brown from the high heat. Now it'll still get done even if you put a lid on it. This way the heat stays in there. This will get done faster. So after a few minutes I will keep on mixing it up. You of course would not freeze the crabs. I had to do it because it took me a few days with my crab trap to get this amount. So you just go to the fish man and pick up some nice fresh blue crabs and bring them home and start cooking. Now as this is cooking, you want to break up the crabs because all the juice and everything, you want all the flavor to come out of there, so you can't leave them whole once you start to stock. And when this process is finished, the cooking, the simmering, we are going to somehow pulverize this even more. Now in the professional kitchen, like the KitchenAid mixing bowl, but a large one. It's a rolling pin that goes on a screen, and it's held by metal brackets underneath. And the rolling pins go on the screen and crush everything. The only thing that's left on the screen is just the shell. All the juice and the meats and everything go through. So we have to do something like that to get everything out of this. That's why I say this is not an easy job, but once it's done, there's no crab soup that is going to taste as good as this if you don't use whole crab. And the darker the bottom of the pan is, the better you're going to be for the color later of the soup. Because we don't add color to this. It's going to make its own color. A few more minutes like this, with the lid off, and then we're going to do the vegetables. This has been another at least 10 minutes after I broke everything up. Now we'll remove this. Now if you had a pot large enough to do this with the vegetables, go right ahead. So now I'm going to put the vegetables in there. And a drop more of oil. Plain vegetable oil, no flavor. Put the parsley, the carrots, the onion, the celery, and the carrots. Make sure you peel the carrots, because all of this is going to be part of the soup. It's going to be pureed. This too, we want to get color here. So I have it on a high flame. Because this will also add and help the color of the soup, which I don't want to have white. So we have to give this color. So keep sauteing this on a high flame. Now we're going to add the tomato. That's crushed tomato. And let that also get a little color. And then we'll deglaze this, put the the water, simmer this until the vegetables are soft enough where I'm going to puree them right in there, and then I'm going to put the crab meat. Because like I said, I don't have that machine, so this is the way you have to work around it when you're home, in your home. Now I'm going to deglaze that with the dry white wine. And some brandy or cognac. Now it smells so good. As soon as this reduces, I'm going to add a few quarts of water. because that'll reduce cold water to this. Bring it to a boil, let it simmer. You want to put a pinch of thyme in there? Go right ahead. You want to flavor this with basil? Go right ahead. This is just going to make a delicious crab soup. And we're going to thicken it with bread, which is another way of thickening soups. You probably know how to do it with roux, but we're going to use bread. So let that reduce. Now this has been simmering for about an hour. And now you see all the vegetables that we pureed have really disintegrated. And now it's much thinner, but the aroma through the house is solid crab. I'm still going to let this cook further, and about another 20 minutes or a half hour we'll take a look at it again. The crab flavor has to be strong. When it's strong, well, it's been well over an hour. Now I take the lid off because now I want it to reduce. No salt is in there yet, but the crab flavor is there. But for me it's not strong enough, so we'll let it reduce just a little. Then we'll go to the final, one of the final steps. Now it's reduced enough. Take a clean bowl, put a colander in there, a metal one, because we're going to do some banging on this. And we'll take the crab out. Fill this up. No, I can't not fill it up. That's enough. Because now we have to somehow just crush this and try and get all the juices out of the shell as best you can. Just keep on going like that. Okay, now that should taste a little bit different than what's in the pot. Okay, the pot tastes pretty good, and this tastes just a bit stronger. We're pushing everything out of the shell. This is going to take some time, so I'm going to be crushing that. I found a couple of good tools. 2 metal knife spoon. This one is good. Breaking everything up as best as I can. And as we're doing this, now if you just remove all the shells from the stock and threw them out, look what else you'd be throwing out. All of this. Okay? Okay, that was another 3 minutes or so that I've been pounding on that. So let's see what we got. Oh, we're not done yet because there's a lot more shells in the pot. So we have this. That would have gone into the garbage if you would just lift the shells out and just save the stock. So we'll throw what we have here out and we'll continue. Now that's done. I'm going to leave this in there for another 10-15 minutes and let gravity help me out. Whatever's left in there will drip down. And so far, that's almost a half a quart that would have been thrown out. This has got to be the messiest and extremely time-consuming item to make, but the finished product is something you can't compare. So in the real kitchen, in the professional kitchen, this is the way things are made with the help of some machinery. Now this is really ready. All you have to do is put salt and pepper and another pinch of brandy, but there could be little particles of shell in there from the pounding, and I want this very smooth. But as you see, the consistency is just right. No starch has been used in this recipe, just the vegetables and the crab. So I'm going to put it in the chinois, and hopefully when we're done, all that crab maybe just made 1 quart. So when you put it in the chinois, then you have to take a spoon and keep pressing it until there's nothing left except this. A lot of that is crab, so keep pushing it, because you know the shell is not going to go through this fine mesh. So you lose a little, but not all that much. So that's what we lost from just that filling that one up. But I got shell in my mouth. So I'll continue doing that until it's all gone. It's all done and strained, and this is what we come away with. 1 quart and just shy of 1.5 quarts. Now, if you follow the recipe and the right amounts of everything, and you come up with double this amount, it's too weak. So you need to come up with 1.5 quarts. If you came out with less than 1.5 quarts, then it's going to be even stronger. But this is plenty good, but we're still not done yet. Okay, now this is too watery, so we're going to add the bread to this to thicken it up. And whatever the level is, if it starts to reduce too much as you're working with it, just add a drop more water to keep this level the same, because that's the amount of soup you want. So we're going to get this hot, and then I'll show you what. Now I'm going to deglaze that with the dry white wine. And some brandy or cognac. Now it smells so good. As soon as this reduces, I'm going to add a few quarts of water, because that'll reduce cold water to this. Bring it to a boil, let it simmer. You want to put a pinch of thyme in there, go right ahead. You want to flavor this with basil, go right ahead. This is just going to make a delicious crab soup. And we're going to thicken it with bread, which is another way of thickening soups. You probably know how to do it with roux, but we're going to use bread. So let that reduce. All right. That's enough reduction right there. We'll add the cold water. Let this boil, simmer. Let everything get soft in there. You don't have to season this up until later because it's a soup, so salt and pepper later. As soon as that boils, simmer it until the vegetables are soft. Then we'll take the next step. Now, I do have a lot of vegetables in there for the amount of crab, so we're going to see how this is going to work. If I feel that the flavor of the vegetables is like getting a little too heavy for the crab, then I'll just cut the vegetable recipe in half. That's no problem. But if it's working well, and once everything in here is pureed, it will have the body, the correct body for a sauce or a soup. So let's just wait and see. But this is the correct technique to take to make a good crab bisque. Well, it's just about to boil. Now just look at the color. That's good. That's nice and dark. So it should stay like this. Because we're not making a cream soup. But after we make this, if you wanted to add cream to it, you could. You can do many things. Let's say you wanted to just make a vegetable crab soup. So you would dice up the vegetables nice and small, or whatever size you enjoy in your soups. When I sauteed the crabs, then put the wine and the brandy into the crab, and then the water. Simmer that and try to crush them up, strain it over the vegetables, and then maybe use a little roux to thicken it. Well, things are soft enough now. Alright, I'm using this tool. You can do this in a blender also, but I would allow it to cool down for about a half hour. So I keep on going like this. This should take about 10 minutes or so. Everything should get pureed nicely. And then I'll put the crabs in there. And that color, look at that brown color. Like I said, the texture right now is perfect for a soup. But it might have too much vegetable in it. That's enough, that's nice. Now we take the crab. I'm going to let the crab simmer. I'm going to put a little bit more water because I want this to be covered. And plus, if I taste it right now and just have a little crab flavor, which it does, and that was only from the scrapings of the pan. And what does that mean? It's going to taste good. So we'll put about another quart of water in there. That's perfect. I'll just leave this alone for a good hour, maybe even longer. Then I'm going to try and crush the shells even more. Show you how we're going to do that. Because all that flavor that's in the claws, I want to get that out. The body I crushed already, so we're pretty good there. Okay. We'll simmer this for over an hour, and the color is beautiful. Now I cut the bread into little cubes and just throw it right in. And as soon as it really softens up, we'll take that blender again I'll use this, it'll smooth it, and you'll see a texture that you usually don't see when it comes to soups. Most homeowners don't even know that this type of thickening exists. It's really in a professional kitchen. But that's why we're here. Try to give you the best that I know. And I'll tell you once again, this recipe made my stove a mess, very time consuming, but we come out with 1.5 quarts. That means with no problem 4 people can enjoy this. And I'm not saying this is a cheap item, and this is only the soup. But you know, when I made some stuffed lobster a couple of weeks ago, 2 4-pound lobsters and a little bit more, that cost about $90. That's how it is when it comes to seafood. But crabs are a little cheaper. Now, if you live in a different part of the country where you don't get the blue crabs, do it with whatever crabs are local in your area. The flavor is going to be crabby, and well, I don't know how easy it's going to be to break up shells on some of those, like the Dungeness crab. That may take a little more work, or you'd have to take it apart by hand first. So we'll let this simmer, keep the level the same, whatever it is. If it reduces, put a little water, because it'll still taste the same. Then I'm going to put a few drops of brandy in there. Then I'll season it with salt and pepper, and we're done. Well, to make it easier for you, if you don't want to have one of these immersion tools, you could take the bread and put it into Cuisinart first, and just run it until it's like breadcrumbs, and then put it in here. But don't think you could do this with breadcrumbs. It's entirely different. This is fresh bread. So this is... So I'm going to run this and check the consistency. I put the sea salt and cayenne pepper because the color of cayenne is close to this. Black pepper I like, but I don't want to see the black spots in there. And white pepper, I just don't care for. This is crab bisque. It's done. Now, if you took this amount and put a 1/2 pint of heavy cream in there, then you would have cream of crab, which would be totally delicious. And into this I also put 2 tablespoons of brandy, and now it's time to serve it. That's good enough for 4 people. Look at the consistency. Look how smooth. How nice that is. And I take back what I said earlier, that there's no starch in here, because we use bread to thicken this. Notice how smooth it is. And I'll tell you, the salt brings out the taste of the crab. You have to enjoy this. If you followed my directions exactly with the amounts of everything, this is really tasty. Enjoy. Another point of information, you can make this soup a couple of weeks ahead of time. Just put it in the freezer. You take it out 2 days before, you put it in the refrigerator. You just heat it up slowly, and it comes back and looks like this and tastes like this with no problem. This right now you can also use as a sauce over a piece of broiled fish. Many uses. Enjoy.